Settle deeper into your resting place and allow your breath to slow your limbs to soften as we embark on a gentle journey across epochs, from the edge of civilization to the heart of empire. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the vast stone barrier that stretches beyond the horizon, the Great Wall of China. Its silhouette winds over ridges and across plains, a weathered spine of history, built by countless unseen hands. Next, we will enter the chamber of the emperor who commanded its construction. Qin Shi Huang, a ruler of unified destinies and restless dreams. Beneath this monument lies a story of hardship and endurance, ambition and artistry. A story we'll explore with measured calm. Let your senses soften. Let your thoughts drift as we journey together. First, we will stand with the workers, the laborers pressed into frontier service, whose sweat and perseverance shaped this monumental endeavor. Then, we descend beneath the earth to the silent company of the terracotta army, enigmatic guardians cast in clay, waiting in stillness. Finally, we will walk the hush of imperial court life in Xi'an, where each ceremony echoes with symbolism and restraint. This is not grand war or explosive drama. It is the quiet rhythm of lives lived within structure, duty, and purpose. You push yourself erect, joints stiff from the previous day's toil. Rammed earth walls are built layer by layer, each compacted with wooden mallets. You feel the sting in your shoulders, the echo of blow against wooden frame, the rebound of the frame into your feet. Other laborers lie nearby, breathing softly, the ragged clothes stained with sweat and clay. The grains float in cloudy water, barely warm. You swallow slowly, tasting stubborn flour and silence. Your shelter shudders. Flames from a communal fire flicker against the dark. You huddle close with others, sharing warmth and stories, softly about children left behind, festivals missed, rain after drought. A handful of pickled vegetables adds acidity, but no comfort. Hunger is a steady whisper inside your ribs. Segment 1. Why it sucked to be a worker on the Great Wall. Muscle memory whispers assurance. Hands know the stone, shoulders know the swing, feet know the patterns of soil. Often, voices trail away into memory, discouraged by the reality that you are far from that life. You are within the innermost sanctum of the imperial court, a quiet chamber lit by flickering oil lamps. Silk screens rustle gently with the movement of servants. And beyond, seated atop a low dais, clad in flowing dark robes embroidered with golden dragons, he was born during the Warring States period, a time when China was not one nation, but many fractious kingdoms, each scheming, each fortified. His upbringing was not gentle. Court life, even for a prince, was riddled with paranoia and the constant pressure of political survival. Sits Ying Zheng, the man who would become Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. You stagger across narrow terraces, stepping carefully to avoid slipping into chasms. Beneath your feet, packed soil echoes your weight. Centuries pass, offering water when they can spare it a cool draft, metallic in taste, life-giving. Imagine whispers of mortality plagued him. He feared death not just as an end, but as the unraveling of all he had built. Every shadow harbored suspicion. Every smile could mask betrayal. It was this world that shaped him not into a gentle ruler. The wars were brutal, the toll vast. His meals were tasted in advance. His guards were rotated. He feared even the servants who dressed him. Some returned with exotic herbs and potions. Others never returned at all. Legend tells of ships dispatched to the eastern seas, sailing with hundreds of young men and women to find paradise and never seen again. He standardized weights, measures, currency, and even the script binding the newly unified territories with shared systems. Some say fish were loaded into his carriage to mask the smell of decay as his entourage journeyed back to the capital. The emperor had passed, but his legacy, built in stone and silence, remained. Thousands of workers labored in secret, shaping chambers and corridors deep within the earth. And within it, a silent army of life-sized warriors stood watch. But that is a story for the next part of our journey. Roads stretched across the empire like veins, carrying messages and imperial decrees at unheard-of speed. Those who resisted faced harsh punishments: exile, forced labor, or death. The emperor's vision allowed little room for opposition. But with victory, he took on a new title, Shi Huangdi, or First Emperor, declaring himself the beginning of a new era. But into a calculating force, one that would carve order from chaos with relentless will. Your shelter is a makeshift lean-to, woven from animal hides and rough branches, pitched on packed earth. The air is cool and still, tinged with grit. There is no doctor, only bitter herbs and prayers. Others are injured by collapsed stone rolls back. Earth gives way. And when the sun slips behind distant ridges and sleep arrives cold and dusty, you rest knowing this long swell of effort will leave stones in its wake, monuments to human persistence. They vanish into the wall itself, forever part of its structure. A fine dust coats your lips and eyelashes, an unyielding presence. You awaken in the pale ache of dawn, before first light touches the ridge. There is no call to rise, only the quiet pressure of obligation. You haul stones that scrape and clatter on rough wood, maneuver logs that sink into soft ground, each motion precise and exhausting. Your world is defined by repetition. By midday, your hands are splayed with calluses, your shoulders ache, your spine heavy with a day's burden. The earth is both your canvas and your iron cage. You pause at midday, a wooden bowl of millet gruel held in rough hands. Conversations are rare, but telling. Peers speak of home, gentle rivers, soft fields, familiar smells of rice cooking, not the harsh clay and dust that encompass your present. The sun trades places with the cloudless sky, and as the afternoon advances, the work continues. When evening comes, a low wind sweeps the plateau. Some fall silent from sickness. Fevers flare, lungs burn, bodies shake. Yet in the slow cadence of labor day after day, there is a rhythm. You endure because others endure. You work because the wall is now part of you, as much as you are part of it. Segment 2. The First Emperor, Qin Shi Huang's Tyranny and Legacy. Imagine now that you are no longer on the frontier. The biting wind has quieted. The air is heavier here and filled with incense. His gaze is steady, inscrutable, and beneath it, an entire civilization bends to his vision. But before the silk robes and polished jade seals, he was simply a prince, a child raised in the court of the Qin state. Imagine the boy growing older in corridors lined with plots. By the age of 13, he was king, and by 38, he had crushed the last of the rival kingdoms, forging one nation from many. His rule was guided by a singular obsession: control. He centralized power, dismantling the old feudal systems. But control came at a cost. Books that conflicted with official ideology were gathered and burned, particularly the works of Confucian scholars. Yet he was not simply a tyrant. He was a man haunted by the impermanence of life. As he grew older, his gaze turned inward. So he searched, desperately. He sent emissaries to distant lands in search of an elixir of life, of magical islands and immortal sages. In his final years, he grew reclusive, drifting through the empire in a mobile palace, changing locations constantly to avoid plots, sleeping rarely, guarded even in his dreams. And yet, his most enduring legacy would not be the wall, nor the roads, nor the edicts, but his tomb. Beneath a hill near the modern city of Xi'an, he ordered the construction of a vast underground palace, meant to mirror his imperial court in death. When Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE, his body was hidden from the court as his ministers scrambled to preserve order. Now, breathe in gently. Allow the stillness of that subterranean palace to settle into your thoughts as we drift toward the enigma that lies buried. Very well. Let us descend now not into a palace of noise or splendor, but into the earth itself. A soft step into mystery, a quiet exhale into forgotten soil, and the gentle, patient hands of farmers brushing dust from the face of an ancient warrior. Segment 3. Hidden Soldiers, the discovery of the Terracotta Army. The year is 1974. The place is a quiet village on the outskirts of Xi'an, in Shaanxi province. It is a dry, cracked land weathered by time, the soil rich with silt and sediment deposited long ago by the Yellow River. A group of farmers are digging a well. Their shovels break through layer after layer of packed earth, expecting, perhaps, to find nothing more than stone and groundwater, but instead a piece of clay. Not a pot, not a vase, a face, startlingly lifelike. Cold to the touch, but unmistakably human. Brows carved with subtle furrows, lips slightly parted. The face of a soldier staring upward from the dust of centuries. They had stumbled upon the edge of a secret that had slept for over 2,000 years, one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in history. Soon, the digging expanded, carefully, slowly, and what they found, buried beneath meters of soil, would take decades to uncover. Row upon row, regiment after regiment. An entire army frozen in silence. These were not crude statues. They were individuals each with their own expressions, hairstyles, armor, and posture. Some bore mustaches, others long topknots. Some had the hardened faces of seasoned generals, others the softness of youth. And they were not alone. Nearby stood chariots, with wooden frames and bronze fittings. Horses with alert ears and flared nostrils, frozen mid-step. Infantry, cavalry, archers, officers. Over 8,000 of them, though not all yet revealed. The earth still holds many in its secret grasp. Archaeologists soon confirmed what legends had long whispered. This was the Terracotta Army, created to guard the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. But how did such a marvel come to be? Let us drift backward once again. Imagine the construction site, nearly 2,200 years ago. Thousands of workers, laboring under the eye of imperial overseers. The air is thick with dust from kilns. Clay is kneaded and shaped, molded around armatures, fired in great underground furnaces. The workshops are like hives buzzing with motion, yet tightly controlled. Each warrior was made in parts, torsos, limbs, heads, all crafted separately, then assembled. The heads, in particular, were sculpted with remarkable detail. It's believed that molds provided a general base, but artisans then carved individual features by hand, adding subtle marks and variations. Some scholars suggest these may have been based on real people, perhaps even the emperor's own soldiers. Once formed and fired, the statues were painted vivid colors of red, blue, green, and purple, pigments made from ground minerals and precious metals. A vibrant army, now faded to the soft gray of oxidized clay. And beyond the soldiers, more wonders. Musicians, acrobats, civil servants, bronze birds, even entire stables and stonemasons. A microcosm of court and country recreated below ground for an emperor's afterlife. But much of it remains untouched. Qin Shi Huang's actual tomb, the central mausoleum mound, has never been excavated. Ancient records describe a chamber lined with bronze, with rivers of liquid mercury flowing through it to mimic the Yangtze and the Yellow River. Stars set into the ceiling with pearls, a replica of the empire beneath the earth. Yet the tomb lies undisturbed, out of respect and caution. Modern scans suggest extraordinarily high levels of mercury in the surrounding soil, lending some credence to the old texts. But disturbing the chamber risking damage to both its contents and to the delicate balance of gases, metals, and time remains a risk archaeologists have yet to take. So the emperor still sleeps, and his army waits alert, motionless, unyielding. One can only imagine the eerie silence in those vaulted corridors, the dust slowly resettling on the boots of statues that have not moved for 2 millennia. Now, as you lie still, consider the patience of stone, the years that pass like water, and how the past, though buried, never truly disappears. It merely waits to be uncovered. Let us now step away from tombs and into light, for in our final journey tonight, we will explore a very different rhythm of life, not the toil of laborers or the ambitions of rulers, but the rituals and refinement of those who lived inside the velvet cage of imperial luxury. Certainly, let us now ascend from the clay warriors and ancient soil, moving from tombs to tapestries, from silence to soft ceremony. Segment 4. Court life in Xi'an, the imperial elite and their ceremonies imagined. Now, the ancient city of Chang'an, the imperial capital during the Han and Tang dynasties, built atop and around the ruins of earlier cities like Xianyang, where the Qin once ruled. It is early morning. The sun, still low in the sky, bathes the rooftops in a pale golden light. The tiled eaves of the palace buildings catch the rays, glinting quietly. The air is crisp. In the distance, incense smoke curls slowly upward from altars and private shrines, mingling with the scent of morning dew on garden moss. At the heart of this city lies the imperial court, a sprawling complex of stone, lacquered wood, and precisely laid courtyards, some vast, echoing with footsteps, others intimate, with pebble paths winding between miniature pines and sculpted rocks. This is not a place of haste. Here, time moves differently, measured by gongs, ritual, and the quiet repetition of form. The palace rhythms. The day begins with ritual. Servants stir in the gray light well before dawn, lighting lanterns, unrolling mats, and preparing ceremonial garb. Inside the women's quarters, silk robes are steamed and smoothed. Combs glide through long, oiled hair. Delicate powders are mixed, cheeks brushed with pale color. For the imperial family and their attendants, presentation is paramount. At sunrise, the morning court assembly begins. Officials, dressed in long robes marked by their rank black, blue, red, gather in rows beneath the great hall. Some have ridden for days to deliver reports. Others are permanent fixtures of the capital's bureaucracy, bound by the codes of Confucian order. There is little movement. The ritual of the morning audience is highly structured. Bows are deep, voices low. The emperor, if he chooses to appear, sits elevated, behind a gauze curtain or on a raised throne, listening more often than speaking. Proclamations are read, memorials accepted, grievances voiced and noted. Then the court disperses, and the quiet labor of governing resumes behind closed doors. Daily life in the inner court within the inner palace, especially the harem quarters, or Haogong life, is more private, but no less bound by ceremony. This was a world of women, imperial consorts, concubines, lady attendants, seamstresses, and readers. Their days were governed not by politics, but by rank, routine, and the subtle intrigues of favor and status. There were lessons in poetry, painting, etiquette, and music. Intricate games played on carved boards. Scrolls read aloud in quiet corridors. Occasionally, walks in the gardens, always chaperoned, beneath willows and plum blossoms, where koi stirred slow ripples in still ponds. Imagine the hush of footsteps on polished stone, the distant echo of a guqin string, lightly plucked. A maid refilling a teacup with water, just below boiling, so the leaves open gently, not scorched. The ceremonies of elegance. Throughout the year, the palace calendar was filled with formal events, ancestor rituals, seasonal festivals, court banquets, and tea ceremonies. These were not casual affairs. Every movement, from the way a robe was folded to the order of the dishes served, was dictated by centuries of tradition. Dances were performed in perfect synchronization sleeves, like waves, the silence broken only by flute and drum. At the Mid-Autumn Festival, Lanterns floated in the palace pools, their flames reflected like stars on water. The emperor might compose a poem, or request one from a favored scholar. Wine, sweet and warm, was poured into cups shaped like dragons or cranes. And of course, there was tea not simply consumed, but revered. The Tang dynasty, in particular, refined tea culture into art. Leaves were ground, whisked, served in delicate cups without handles. Conversations during these ceremonies were hushed, reflective. The act of drinking became a moment of harmony, of mindfulness, of shared serenity. A palace of contrasts, but court life was not without tension. Beneath the silks and courtesies, power shifted like sand. Emperors aged, favorites rose and fell. Eunuchs wielded silent influence. Wives competed for the emperor's attention, for their sons' futures. A single poem, misunderstood, might spell disgrace. A look held too long, a gesture too bold, everything mattered. Yet to the outsider, to the ambassador from distant Persia, or the Korean envoy waiting days for audience, it all appeared seamless, as if the palace breathed not air, but tradition itself. Still, one must wonder what it truly felt like to live always within walls, to be surrounded by beauty and silence, but also scrutiny, to exist in a world where every word was weighed, every step choreographed. For the palace was not just a residence. It was a stage, a sacred mirror of heaven's order on earth. And as the candles burned low and the corridors emptied, the hush of the palace deepened. Somewhere in the dark, a wind bell chimed gently. A servant turned down a lantern. Footsteps echoed one last time. And another day in the imperial court quietly came to a close. You may now let your mind drift from the palace gates. And if you're still with me, we'll soon bring everything together. One final breath of reflection before you rest. Closing, stones, shadows, and stillness, reflecting on the ancient world. So now, listener, we find ourselves at the end of the path. From the wind-blown battlements of the Great Wall, to the rigid throne of the first emperor, to the silence beneath the soil, where clay soldiers stood for centuries. And finally, to the polished stone of Xi'an's palace courts, where sleeves whispered against lacquer and ceremony shaped the passing of time. We have wandered through centuries, shaped by vision and fear, by cruelty and control, by dreams carved into stone and silence. From the common to the crowned, we began with the laborers, the ones who hauled stone, braved the elements, and perished in distant provinces, remembered only in footnotes or fragments of song. The ones whose hands left behind no written record, but whose sweat is still sealed in the mortar between those ancient stones. Then we turn to the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, the unifier, the conqueror, the man who burned books and built roads. Frozen echoes of a time when rulers shaped even death into architecture, who sought to live forever and instead left behind a nation. His name endures. His tomb remains sealed. His legacy is both awe and shadow. Beneath the earth, the terracotta army waited in stillness, thousands of faces, no two alike. Symbols of loyalty, tools of fear. And finally, we stepped inside the quiet sanctuaries of the imperial court, where beauty and order masked ambition, and power was exercised not with swords, but with scrolls and silence. From dirt paths to marble steps, from calloused palms to golden hairpins, from wind-bitten sentry towers to the perfumed elegance of tea, poured in stillness. History, as always, contains both the pain of the many and the rituals of the few. Letting the dust settle, and now, as the dust of centuries gently settles around us, but still they worked. As the echoes of footsteps and drums and chimes fade into quiet, they lived. Let the clang of hammers and the hum of flutes drift away. And tonight, in the stillness, they have kept you company. A gentle return. The emperor's tomb still waits, but here now you may rest. You may find your own breath, growing slower your body still. You have walked with those who carved the world, who lived not in stories, but in rhythm sunrise to dusk, generation to generation. They did not know their lives would become history. They did not know we would remember them, or wonder what their days felt like. They served. Now let the stone walls fade. Let the echoing courts dissolve into mist. You are no longer in the dust of Qin, nor the halls of Tang. You are back in your own time, your own breath, your own softness. The Great Wall still stands. Thank you for walking with me. Sleep well beside him.